one act that I know is not going to get in this year, that I wanted to start having a conversation about that I don't think anybody's actually talking about is the Hardy Boys. And so I went ahead and I used my 7th pick for them. They were like my last pick, they were my 7th rounder. And JD actually picked them too, which surprised the hell out of me because we didn't even talk about it ahead of time. But I don't think there's a more influential tag team in the modern era than the Hardy Boys, right?
I think Ryan Frederick voted for them too.
What's that?
I think Ryan Frederick voted for them too.
Well, he's a smart guy. That makes a lot of sense. So, so I don't think there's a more influential tag team in the modern era. If you go around and you talk to all the different tag teams, and then any type of X Division type cruiserweight wrestler that's out there, they've probably stolen some stuff from the Hardy Boys. They've been over everywhere they've gone. At one point in 2015, I think in 2016, when TNA was essentially dead, for like a 6-month period, they actually made them relevant again and increased their ratings by like 200% or something like that. And then got them back into WWE. Now the problem is that every time they get back together, they have a little bit of a run. One of the guys on that team decides to get himself in a little bit of trouble, and then it ends up not working out. But everywhere they go, they've always been over. And to further the point, this year's Bound for Glory, they did about 3,000 people in Detroit, right? With the Hardys and Joe Hendry essentially drawing the house, right? Yeah. And Hardys were the main event. Joe Hendry was a very big part of that draw. A year ago at Bound for Glory in 2023, they did about 1,000 people in Chicago with Will Ospreay kind of drawing the house. So that tells me like these guys are legitimate drawing cards everywhere they've ever been. And the Young Bucks, the Motor City Machine Guns, Private Party, you know, go on down the line. They've all been influenced in some form or fashion by the Hardy Boys. I think it's time to have a discussion.
Super influential. But here would be my, you gave a fantastic argument for them. Now, I'm not talking about the late 90s, early 2000s version of the Hardys. I'm talking about the current version of the Hardys, or maybe the last 5 years. What I see, and this may just be, you know, anecdotal, I haven't looked this up, is they come in hot, they stick around, and then they overstay their welcome. And by the time they're done, people are sick of them. That happened in WWE. They came back for that WrestleMania in Florida, over like crazy, coming off of that ROH run, over like crazy. Soon thereafter, not as over. Now, you mentioned there's also some stuff with Jeff kind of screwing things up. Right? AEW, I sort of felt the same way, like coming in hot, really interesting. And at some point you go, okay, they're not the Hardys that we remember in the ring, and thus they lose a little bit of that steam. Now, Matt has reinvented himself a couple of different times, and I think that has been awesome. Like his mind, his creative mind has been fantastic for him. But then, you know, and they're back in TNA, and I think it's awesome. But at some point, how soon until maybe they lose a little bit of their flavor there?
You know what? I think that can happen with WWE. I don't think Vince really saw it in them anymore, and he kind of just drove them down the card. And with AEW, they never really got going. Like they had the one match with the Young Bucks, and then Jeff Hardy started to Jeff Hardy. So, so I don't know that the audience got sick of them
killing people with those swantons.
I know.
Oh
so
my God.
There is a fringe group among AEW fans, because AEW has the word elite in their title. They also think that they're elite. These fans, they act elitist and they talk down to everybody. And they think that if you're not filled with kicking out of every move, and you're not doing 2.9s like crazy, and every match is a 5-star match, they think that somehow you're not that good. And that's how they were kind of treating the Hardy Boys. And of course, Jeff Hardy'd himself. So I don't know that it was so much that everybody got sick of them. I think it's, you know, there's some behavioral issues. Jeff got a DUI, and so that kind of what ruined that run. But I was talking to Ibu from Wrestle Purist a couple weeks ago. He was on the pod, and he said that when he was at an AEW show in New Jersey, the Hardy Boys were on Rampage, and he says typically after Collision or after Dynamite's over, people just head for the hills no matter who's on Rampage. But because the Hardy Boys were wrestling, he said he didn't remember who they were wrestling. He said they're waiting for it. And it was like seeing your childhood heroes come back out, and everybody stayed to watch Rampage just because the Hardy Boys were on. And that was during the AEW run. But look, I try my best not to judge people's careers based off of when they were washed up. I try to look at them at their peaks and how long their peak was, and I think their peak was a long time. Now they have some ebbs and flows and ups and downs and things like that. But we're talking about these guys have been on television for over 25 years, and so of course there's going to be peaks and valleys. And when you're a tag team and you've been a tag team for that long and you're working in American mainstream promotions, they typically don't put those tag teams in a position to be able to draw. Hardy Boys are the exception to that rule. So I just want to start the conversation. I want people to start looking into it. They're not going to make it this year. I know that, but it's time to start advocating and really think hard about those guys.
I have 2 soft roadblocks on this. And the first one is, this is personal. I usually leave only 1 spot for a tag team in each category, just for the space of it. And there was another tag team that kind of took that spot this year that you had already mentioned.
Yeah.
So you gotta I gotta think about the space management for them. When it comes to the Hardys as a whole, though, the thing that holds me back is not that their personal problems cause problems for them, but their personal problems cause problems for the promotions that they were in, and the damage that they would cause by the poor decision making that they had at the time. And it was consistent throughout all the promotions that I have to be compelled in some way that they've truly made a change and no longer are prone to these kind of things before I take them as seriously as other candidates who aren't prone to those kind of mistakes.
And I have a good rebuttal to that. If they were really that big of a problem for these promotions and they were costing promotions money, they wouldn't continue to get chances.
Yeah.
But
So
that's the thing.
still making
This is a
money.
Hall of Fame ballot. This isn't their jobs on the line. This is
Yeah.
this is the elite honors that they get. And so you have to take all of that into account. And some people will and still believe positively. I'm just saying personally, that is something that I take into consideration.
I want to say about the Bucks, you brought up washed up, or not the Bucks, the Hardys. They've been killing it in TNA this year. It's so under the radar, nobody's noticing it, but they're having great matches every month on the specials and TV. When you put them in with the system, it's basically an old school tag team match with the Heat, and then Jeff Hardy gets his one high spot in. Matt works the most of the match, and it's good, and the fans are totally into them, and they come off I've turned such a corner. When they were in AEW, every time they were on TV, I was just I don't want to see these guys anymore. And when they're on Impact, it's a highlight of the show every time. So I think that's
environment matters.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the treatment of them, the way they're presented by the promotion and the way the fans react to them.